Loving Sai Ram, Dr. Amey Deshpande, the Sri Satya Sai Global Council of Trinidad and Tobago, lovingly welcomes you to the series, Awake, Unite, and Inspire. We are extremely grateful, happy, and privileged through Bhagwan's grace and will to have you as our guest on this evening's program. So, Brother Amey, share with us, how did you first come into contact with Sri Satya Sai Baba?
At the outset, I'd like to take this opportunity to invoke his presence and his blessings on all of us. And as he is present, let us offer our reverential pranams at his divine lotus feet. And let us invoke his presence by chanting the Sai Gayatri. Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahe Satya Devaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Most revered elders, dear brothers and sisters, a very warm and loving Sairam from Prashanti Nilayam to all of you. Gives me great pleasure to join you, Brother Faiz, and the entire team. And it's a wonderful initiative that you all have taken to make all of this happen, to marinate ourselves in his glory, in his story. There is really nothing more glorious, there's nothing more elevating than to simply bask in his stories and his glory. We all have had the opportunity to be contemporaries of the living Lord. And this is a very, very special privilege that is bestowed on humanity in very rare times. However, one need not be despondent that, oh, I did not know Swami before this, or I did not have a chance to see him, or I did not have a chance to be his contemporary. All we need to do is to be thankful and be grateful for his presence in our life at this point. So let me begin with my own journey. I would say that I was one of those lucky, or in another sense, a little unlucky one. I'll tell you why lucky. Lucky simply because Swami is there in our lives right from my birth. But unlucky because I often like to say it on a lighter note, that Swami didn't have to perform these outlandish, outrageous miracles to get me. And so I often say, Swami, this is not fair. Everybody else gets their share of cancer cancelled and their shares of, your materializations and your physical manifestation. I did not get any of that because for me, it was as simple as I was born in a Sai devotee family and my parents said, this is God. And that's it. I just simply began to believe that this is God. And so I often I complained to Swami that, Swami, all you had to do was to get my parents. It's almost like the best Friday night deal on Amazon, buy two, get one free. So all he had to do was to get my parents hooked on, and I just came along with that package. But I must, in that sense, also tell you that the way Swami enters each one of our lives is in itself a divine plan, a divine design. And so let me just take you back to how Swami entered into our family's life. I have a mama, that is my mother's eldest brother, who's a very famous mathematician. His name is Dr. Ravindra Kulkarni. He is based in New York. He left India way back in the 1960s. He's one of the few who actually shipped himself to the United States. Having finished his PhD from Harvard, was a very celebrated mathematician, continues to be one. he continues to be still around. And when he was in Indiana, in a place called Bloomington, it was, I think, in 1974 that for the first time, Swami actually appeared in flesh and blood in Bloomington in his house, where he was at that moment teaching. And he had just started to. He was, I mean, he's very deep into Sanskrit as well, and so his study of the scriptures is very deep. And he was introduced to Swami, and so he would meditate. And so he thought that this appearance of Bhagwan in his house in Bloomington was, a product of his meditation. In today's parlance, probably a psychologist would say, I think you're hallucinating, right? So he thought it was just a hallucination, being the very rational person that he was. It did not end there, because the next day, Swami once again appeared in his house in Bloomington to tell him that no, this is not a figment of your imagination. This is my benediction upon you, that I have chosen to appear here. And so saying, Swami in fact told him, come to Brindavan, come to India and see me. And so here was this celebrated mathematician coming after several years back to India. And he spent only a couple of days with his parents in Mumbai, but spent an entire month attending the summer course, in Vrindavan. And it was around that time that my parents' wedding was just fixed, my father and mother. And my father, who otherwise had the opportunity to see Swami, and that's another story. You see, until the time comes, nothing can shake it, nothing can make you see him. So my father started to wonder, who is this person? Who is this Sai Baba for whom a person comes all the way from United States, none less than a so-called rational person, right? A mathematician who's only supposed to, understand the language of science and so on and so forth, is coming and spending a month. Surely there must be something about the Sai Baba. Now, one of my father's very close friends was Mr. Ramesh Sawant, who ended up becoming the state president of Maharashtra organization for a number of years. And he was a very, very close friend of my father. Whenever in the 1960s, when Swami would visit Mumbai, this friend of my father would ask my father, Swami is just here. Why don't you come and have darshan? It's one of the greatest opportunities. And my father simply shooed it away. You see, the time had not come. My father said, oh, okay, yeah, if I have time, I'll come, it's okay. And literally, Swami had come so close that, in fact, Swami would often come to a place called Worli in Mumbai, which is just the next suburb of Bandra, where my father would stay. It was just the next suburb. It was something like a 10 to 15-minute drive. You see, my father was not able to make that 15-minute drive to have Swami's darshan. And here was my mama coming from, 17-hour journey all the way from the United States. See, this is Bhagwan's pull. This is Bhagwan's design. Excuse me. So once he had come, he had the darshan. That is what intrigued my father, my parents. Eventually, my parents got married in 1975 and they had their first darshan of Swami in 1975. However, it was, I think, a couple of years later when my father had to actually travel to the country of Bahrain, which is a Gulf country. And what he had, of course, done is in his long list of the gods' names that he would chant, starting from Rama and Krishna and Tirupati and Hanuman and all of that, he had just inserted one more name called Swami, called Satya Sai Baba, because he thought if at all there was something magical and divine about him, no harm in taking his name, right? So in the long list of gods, he had simply inserted Satya Sai Baba. Little did he know that slowly through the ranks, Swami was going to climb up and up and become the top, the topmost person in our lives, the topmost Lord or God, you can say, right? Climbing through the billboard, the rankings, that's what usually happens. So he had reached Bahrain. Back then, Bahrain was literally a desert, so to speak. And there weren't too many. There was no samiti at all. There was nothing like an organization or a center that one could go to. So he would go to a prayer meeting, which was conducted by the Chinmayananda mission. I'm not sure whether you all are aware. There was a great master guru who was called Swami Chinmayananda, who incidentally several times Swami has given him an audience. And there are wonderful stories related to Swami Chinmayananda also. The meeting between Swami and Swami Chinmayananda. So he would attend the Chinmaya mission prayer meetings. And there in the altar in the Chinmaya mission, there was a beautiful picture of Bhagavan, a very old picture, Swami standing with his Abhay Hasta up and one hand on his hip. So that picture would adorn, along with the number of other deities over there. This picture was also there. And my father was fascinated, was very attracted to that picture for some strange reason, for some divine reason. And so he wanted to know if he had to get hold of that picture, what he should do. So he had asked the organizers, I want that picture. Can you give it to me? And back then they had told him that it will cost him 1,000 rupees. Okay, I mean 1,000 rupees in those days. So of course he had gone there to make some money. So he didn't want to get rid of all his money in one shot. So he was like, yeah, no problem. The photo looks good wherever it is. Let it be there. Okay. But every time, his eye would be on that picture. About a couple of weeks later, somebody, the announcer, the organizer, makes an announcement. They say that we need to shift out of this premises to a new premises. And in the new premises, we will not be able to accommodate these many pictures. So whoever wants to come and pick up whichever picture that they want can come and do so after the prayer meeting, right? Swami had heard, Swami had decided that that was the time that he wanted to enter into our home. And so immediately after the prayer meeting, my father jumped on, he leapt onto that picture. And there was one other person who also leapt onto the picture. And so there was a little tug of war between them. And so that gentleman asked my father, are you a devotee? So my father was like, at least for this picture, I am a devotee. So he pronounced himself as a devotee of Swami. And then that person said, so then why don't you come to my house for bhajans? And that is how my father started attending bhajans. And there were just 5 families who had started off bhajans in Bahrain way back in the late 1970s. And that is how his entry into the organization started. But what really was the turning point was one of the most magnificent miracles, so to speak, that happened in the Samiti. So there were, as I mentioned, there were 5 families who used to do bhajans. There was no center or anything like that. These were just random, devotees of Swami who would get together to do bhajans. It was, I think, in the early 80s, maybe 80 or 81, that there was a gentleman, and his name is, in fact, he is still around. His name is Mr. Dwaraknath. He is right now, a resident of Bangalore. So he was a chartered accountant, staying in Bahrain. His wife was expecting their second child. And so to help with the delivery, his mother-in-law, Mr. Dwaraknath's mother-in-law, had come to Bahrain. Now, this mother-in-law was a very peculiar lady, very eccentric lady in the sense that they all come from the Vaishnava tradition, right? They come from a very strong, Vaishnava refers to a Vishnu tradition. So in India, you have largely 3 sects of Hindus. You have the Vaishnavas, the Vaishnavites, who follow the Vishnu tradition. Then you have the Shaivites who follow the Shiva tradition. And then you have the Shakta tradition who follow the Devi. So Devi, Shiva, Vishnu, we are all aware of this. But back in the day, and in fact, probably 200-300 years ago, this was such a strong tradition that one wouldn't dare to move from a Vishnu to a Shiva or from a Shiva to a Vishnu. So much so that, connected to this, there are so many incidences in Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba's life itself. Very quickly, I'll just take a little diversion here because it's so relevant. There's a discourse which Swami gave in near Bangalore, there is a place called Dharwad. And so Swami had gone to Dharwad to give a discourse. And this discourse was attended by all the Lingayats. Now, the Lingayats are actually the Shaivite community. Okay, they believe only in Shiva. And because Bhagwan, Bhagwan, of course, doesn't get categorized. He's over and beyond. All of these traditions come from him. He's the source of all of these traditions. But because he used to materialize vibhuti and all of that, which is connected to Shiva, in fact, Bhagwan even got an invitation, a so-called invitation there. And Swami gives his discourse, and at the end of the discourse, you see, Swami starts singing Govinda Krishna Jai, Gopala Krishna Jai, Gopala Bala Bala Radha Krishna Jai. We've heard this. Now imagine the entire crowd started singing. Okay, all of them are clapping, vigorously, and there was a thunderous chorus to what Swami sang because the discourse itself was so beautiful. And at the end of the discourse, Swami remarks to one of the close ones. He said, "See, I got even these Lingayats to actually chant Lord Krishna's name." You see, because when it comes from the heart, even they don't know that they have been actually singing Krishna's name. So Swami was in fact remarking in a lighter note that even these Lingayats, even the Shaivites will sing Lord Krishna's name if I were to lead them, right? So that is how, just to give you an idea, how strict these sects are. So this, coming back to now our the story that I was mentioning, this mother-in-law, she was from an absolutely orthodox, strict Vaishnava tradition. And so she was utterly shocked when she actually came and saw Swami's picture and Vibhuti and all of that in her son-in-law's and daughter's house. She almost felt like it was blasphemy, right? That, her daughter and her son-in-law had committed blasphemy by taking on a tradition which had any element of Shiva in it. Okay. And but of course, it was her son-in-law. What can she say after all, right? That is the other part of the tradition, which is you don't say anything to the son-in-law, right? So she used to quietly swallow the bitter pill of a Shiva devotee, being in her house. Can you imagine even uncle's name? That's why I said was Dwaraknath. You see, Dwarakanath is actually Krishna's name. So they all come from a very strong tradition. Their name itself, you will get to know, from which tradition they actually. So it's the Iyers and the Iyengars. Anyway, I won't go into that. So now, whenever bhajans used to actually happen in Mr. Dwaraknath's house, this mother-in-law would go into the inner room, she would lock it, and she would in fact put cotton buds in her ears, lest the name of this Shiva tradition falls on her ears and she gets desecrated. Can you imagine? Such was her feeling that even the name of Sai Baba or Shiva will desecrate her and will leave her, like in the sense like vitiated in her tradition towards Vishnu. So such was her orthodoxy. Now, the reason why I'm building it up so much is because one evening, when Dwaraknath uncle and his wife were not at home, and mother-in-law was looking after the first child, at around 8:30 at night, there is a knock on the door in Bahrain. Now, since she was alone at home, she felt it was not necessary to open the door, but the knock only got louder and louder. And so she goes up to the door and she puts that burglar chain that we have here. She puts that because she's wondering who is this person coming so late at night. Okay, and so she puts the burglar chain and she opens the door and she sees Swami Sri Satya Sai Baba standing outside the door. Now she knows, she doesn't believe in Sai Baba, but she knows that definitely Sai Baba doesn't belong to Bahrain. Okay, means he's not coming from the near neighborhood, right? So she immediately opens, okay, and she invites Swami inside. Swami is standing there in flesh and blood. And Swami materializes in front of her vibhuti and applies to her forehead. And this mother-in-law, this auntie, used to suffer from a very severe skin condition. on her legs. And Swami applies that vibhuti on her legs, and Swami says, "Don't worry, Amma, everything will be fine." And then he materializes an apple and he says, "Give this to Dwarakanath." Okay. And so she says, "Swami, please wait. They are not at home. Can you please wait for some time?" And of course, Swami knew what is that. He's not going to hang around over there waiting for others to come because that vision was meant only for her. So saying, Swami disappeared. A little later, Dwaraknath uncle and his wife, they come back home. And here is this lady. She is, absolutely over the top. She is over the moon. She is like, shouting out, "Baba has come, Baba has come, Baba has come." Now, Dwaraknath uncle begins to wonder, what is wrong with this lady? Has she suddenly turned around? Like now, does she suddenly feel the necessity to be, admitted into this group? Is that why she's doing this? I mean, why would Swami come to give her darshan? Means we are the ones who are chanting, singing bhajans. Okay, she doesn't even care about you, Swami. And why would you come to give her darshan? And so, obviously not believing that why would Swami come that too when nobody's at home and to give her darshan? And she is trying to explain, she's trying to justify, she's saying, really, how do, and so then she points at her forehead. Okay, because there is vibhuti smeared all across her forehead. And this is the fun part. This is the cute part, which I feel like she was like, she's pointing at her forehead and saying, "See, look at my forehead. Do you think I, will ever apply vibhuti to my head?" A lady who does not believe in vibhuti, the Vaishnava tradition, they believe only in chandan. They believe in sandalwood paste. They don't apply vibhuti at all. So, do you think I would apply vibhuti? Okay, that was a big thing. That was a huge thing like, it was a huge clincher, so to speak. But even then, it is not absolutely, it's not a 100% proof that Swami only had done it. I mean, for all you know, like we were saying earlier, she might have just wanted to start getting admitted into this group, and so she must have, put the vibhuti to her own forehead. And here's the cute part that I wanted to tell you. She says, "Even if I had to put the vibhuti, okay, you would feel that you think I have done it. Why would I put it like this instead of putting it like this?" That because all the Vaishnava people, right? You see, they put everything straight. Theirs is the vertical. That's why if you go to Tirupati, if you see all the people who put sandalwood, they are the vertical people, okay? And the Shaivites are all the horizontal people. So she was saying that in my life, my hands have never gone horizontally. Even if I have to put something, I will put it vertically. Why would I put it horizontally? I felt this was a really cute and funny part of the whole story. Even then, it was not a clincher. But Mr. Dwaraknath felt that, you know what? I think my mother-in-law has lost it. I think she needs some kind of mental treatment. And so he quickly called all the other devotees saying, "Can you please come home?" So my father gets a call that Dwaraknath uncle is on the line. He says, "Mr. Deshpande, can you come home? I think my mother-in-law, something she's telling, Swami has come, Swami has come. I'm not sure what to make out of it." So my father actually goes to his house. And so now he's describing, the scene in Dwaraknath uncle's house. When he enters, the other few devotees are also there. And this lady is sitting in the corner of one room, and she's crying because nobody believes her that Swami was in fact there. And at that moment, she says, everybody is consoling her. "Okay, okay, Amma, fine. Don't have to get so melodramatic about it. You know. But she says, "No, you all are not believing that Swami was here. If truly Swami was here right now." Okay, she says this and she points at a small picture which was kept on top of the refrigerator. She points at that picture and says, "Right now, let Swami show his presence from that picture." And in front of everybody standing there, including my father, Vibhuti starts to appear right in front of their eyes. So usually, when Vibhuti comes, we see it later, right? We don't actually see the appearance of Vibhuti. But my father was saying that he actually saw how the Vibhuti starts to appear on the picture, right? It comes in the form of bubbles, like, it's like semi-solid or semi-liquid, and then it crystallizes and it then hardens up. He actually saw the formation, and that was a clincher. That was something that lodged itself so deep in my father's heart, because this is not a God somewhere out there up in the heaven. Who we don't know whether he's listening to our prayers or not. This is a power that can respond in real time. Right now, he can respond to our prayers. Such is his magnificent power, right? And so this was one of the big miracles in my father's life. It doesn't kind of end there. There's a little epilogue to it, because next year when my father had come to Prashanti Nilayam, he had met Professor Kasturi. And in those days, what would happen is, whenever such kind of miraculous presence of Swami, his omnipresence was kind of um, somebody told about his omnipresence, they would actually write an entire account of it and send it to Professor Kasturi, which would sometimes appear in the Sanatana Sarthi of that month. So we also had written an entire account of Swami in Bahrain, and we had sent it to Professor Kasturi, and that paper was there. And so when Kasturi Garu asked, where are you coming from, and he said Bahrain, he said, yes, I've got an article from, tell me more about it. And so my father had the opportunity to tell Professor Kasturi the entire story. And so then my father asked, will it come in Sanatana Sarthi? He just very humbly asked. And Professor Kasturi said, "Oh, no. See, like this, we get, a couple of dozen, accounts of Swami's presence in different countries. Everything, if we were to start publishing everything in Sanatana Sarthi, the Sanatana Sarthi will become a 200-page manual every month. So we don't do that. Only when Swami permits, only then we actually publish an account." Dear brothers and sisters, I wanted to tell you that March of 1983. Open that and you will find on the last page, there is an account of Baba in Bahrain. There is an article which says Baba in Bahrain. And in fact, that was the ultimate, kind of a authentic stamp of Swami, certification from Swami, because it means that Swami himself had allowed that article to be published, of his presence. So, I mean, that is how, that's how Swami came. And of course, I can just go on and on and on about how Swami entered into our lives. You see, the beauty of God entering our lives, no? In the great debate between devotion and knowledge, in the great debate between which is better, the path of knowledge or the path of devotion. In Sanskrit, the words are the Bhakti Marga or the Jnana Marga. The Jnana Marga is the path of knowledge, it is the path of inquiry, right? It's the path of self inquiry. And when you keep inquiring, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Again and again, ultimately it dawns that you are nothing but the Supreme itself, right? So that is the end point of the path of knowledge. Then you have the path of devotion, where the end point is actually me and my Lord are one and the same, right? The difference between this Jnana Marga, the path of knowledge, and Bhakti Marga is that, you see, the Jnana Marga is like a king. When self-realization happens, it is like a royal experience. You see, if suppose in your houses, just imagine, if a king of or a president of your country, imagine if he were to come, or he or she were to come to your house, what will happen? You will keep everything spick and span and ready, and the best of cutlery and the best of cuisines will be laid out. And then you have a royal sofa or a couch for him or her to come. And then eventually when the president or the king comes, what happens? He just comes and sits. Okay. His mere appearance in your house or his mere arrival to the house is good enough. He doesn't need to do anything in your house, isn't it? His presence itself is the ultimate. That is the path of, so that is what happens in the path of knowledge. When self-realization comes, it just comes, and that's it. You have to work really hard for it. But, in contrast, the path of devotion, the bhakti, is often compared to a maid servant in the house. You see, Bhakti is a maid servant who quietly enters. There is no big halla balu about her entrance into the house. She quietly enters, but she cleans every corner of your house. Every cutlery piece, every table and furniture of yours is cleaned again and again and again. Her presence in your house is almost like an omnipresence, but it is never seen. And what you need to do is to simply hand over your house to her. You see, Swami's presence in our life, no? When we take the path of devotion, is like that. All you need to do is to insert his name into your long list of my family, my country, my samiti, my community. In that all long list, just add my Swami. And slowly but surely, you will see Swami making his inroads into your life, and slowly he takes over your entire life. That is what has happened with us. And so I will stop here. Saira.
Thank you very much, Brother Amir. That was really, really mysterious. It was divine and very, very unique, the way that you described it. And what a blessing it is for you to have been born into a Sai family. Very, very good karmic merit at such a tender age to be aware of the avatar of the age. So thank you so much for sharing and describing it so beautifully. So, Brother Amir, you have been in the immediate physical presence of the avatar of the age for many, many years, having studied at his university and now working with the education and human values part of the organization there. So you're very much involved with being in party for so many years. Could you kindly share at least, and I know you've had so many wonderful, blissful experiences with Bhagwan, can you share at least two of your most memorable ones you've had with him over the years?
So you put me in a real spot when you say only two, because it is so difficult to actually zero in on just two. Um, there are absolutely, the very first darshan, which I've often narrated, in fact, comes to my mind as one of my most memorable. So I won't repeat it once again because I think ad nauseum I have spoken about it in several other satsangs. But I'll share with you a couple of other instances.
But Brother
Is
Amir,
that okay?
I'll just share one thing. You may have shared it with many other devotees many, many times, but especially the devotees in the West Indies. I am almost sure large percentage of them may not have heard about that experience. So I think it would be well worth the while if you can really share that one in addition to one more, and then we can even go on to three if that is possible.
All right. Okay. So then let me start with that very first. So, continuing from where we left off, which is my parents, see, back then when we are small children, what do we have? In fact, even as adults, what do we know about the concept of God? Right? When we certify Satya Sai Baba as God, isn't it an absolute fallacy on our part? See, who can certify somebody as God? I think an authority to certify something must be an authority over and above that authority, right? Right? So if we have to certify Satya Sai Baba as God, it means we have to be above Satya Sai Baba, which means basically what happens to us now is we have a long list of tick boxes. Okay, so if he fulfills 8 out of the 10 or 20 out of the 30, what should I say, tick boxes, hence proven or hence decided or hence certified Satya Sai Baba is God. Okay, it for to me it's actually it's more of a joke that we are somebody who's going to certify him as God. So we don't have any idea of God. We have no clue of God. Okay, so I think what my mother had done, something that I really cherish, is that she had not even told me that this is God. She simply said, "This is your hero." Okay, if there is one hero in your life, if there is one person that you want to follow till the end of your life, it is this person. That's all. And so I literally took it, I literally and figuratively made him the marvelous hero of my life. Pun intended over there, right? Today, all of the generations of children today have Marvel heroes, right? We have the most marvelous hero with us. Okay, so I was in those days as a little boy was extremely smitten by his presence. For me, just the crown of hair and everything about him was absolutely like stylish. For me, to put it in a very, in a very very crude way, Swami was a rock star for me. Okay, like his walking, his movement of his hands, the way he would sway at bhajans, everything was like wow, like I don't know what it was. If you ask me, probably if somebody outside were to look and say, you find that wow, yeah, I found it wow, I don't know why. Right, so I just found everything about Swami extremely wow. Right, like for example, in the picture that is right behind the brother Faiz, you will notice Swami's robe would always cover his feet, right? You can see that in the picture behind. So when Swami would walk, and in those days, back in the early 80s, it was still the sands of Prashanti. There was no Kulwanthal. In 1989, it was concrete. But even before that, it was the sands of, of Chitravati, the riverbed, that was actually brought into Prashanti Nilayam. And so Swami would glide on top of these sands. And one thing so strange about Swami's walk, you can even now see it in some of the old videos, is when he walks. You see, when we walk, no, we have this movement. But when Swami would walk, right, he would just glide as if he was on rollerblades. So as a little boy, I used to think, how does he do that? Because walking on sand, and I'm sure for all the West Indian devotees out there, you have walked on a ton of beaches, and you know how difficult it is to walk on sand. Right? So how does a person walk without any discomfort? That was the first thing that in fact, kind of hit me. So I would walk, I would actually look at how he's walking, and he would just stand in the middle, he'll look up or he'll look down, and his hands would go like that. I used to feel wow, something. Now just imagine, as somebody who's smitten by his hero, what do we want? We want our hero should speak to us, right? Our hero should acknowledge our presence. Like, I'm a big fan. If we would want our hero to know that we are his big fans, right? So it was the same with me. So I remember my first recollectable darshan would have been 84 or so. I would have been 3 or 4 years old, and we were in Prashanti, and as always, back then, more than actually having Swami's darshan, what is more important is Swami having our darshan. Meaning, Swami's darshan we will anyway have, but Swami should see me, right? I'm sure. I think for those of you who have not experienced this, it will be so stupid, for us to say, back then, what we used to do, on a lighter note, typically after darshan, the conversation would be, so how was darshan? And we would and the conversation would be like, yeah, it was an okay darshan, not a great darshan. Why? Because we would be sitting in the 30th line or the 20th line and have darshan. You see, having the darshan of the Lord is the ultimate thing. But even in that, there were, like good darshan, okay darshan, close darshan, far darshan. There were all of these varieties. So all of us wanted that close darshan. If possible, a Pada Namaskar. Swami taking our letter. Even greater would be that Swami actually materializes Vibhuti. Even greater is that he speaks to us. And the best of all would be if he would call us for an interview, right? Those were the gradations of our darshan experience. So I wanted a similar gradation. I wanted a little bit higher in the hierarchy of darshans. And so every day we would pray for token number one, right? We wanted that first line to go and sit in the front. And every day we would go and we would be sitting and we would get all double digit token numbers, 11, 19, 21. So we every day we would pray, Swami, please, Swami. And on the penultimate day, so this was one day before we were to leave that year, the person who was sitting, in our, or rather in whose line we were sitting, he picks up the token, and that excitement when you get a number one, he says, in those days they would lift up, the person sitting right in the front would lift up and show to the rest of the line, so the entire line would be like, now we'll be bubbling with enthusiasm. So so all of us were bubbling and we dashed in, and by then we had already identified the vantage points. We had identified that point where we knew Swami comes every day over there, right? He may miss out on other points, but this point he definitely comes. So we had made all our strategic calculations and we deposited ourselves, me and my father, in the first line. Now, I did not know that children are not allowed to sit in the first row. Because what would typically happen is, when Swami comes, children will start running towards Swami, and that was a breach of discipline. And nobody could do anything. Before the Sevadals could stop you, because you're in the first row, you would be halfway through, to Swami. So the children were never allowed to sit anywhere above the third row. It's all, third row and after. And so while I am in all enthusiasm, I'm waiting for this greatest moment of my life where I will have a tete-a-tete with, my hero. My hero will see me, I will see him, and, the magic will happen and love will, sprout forth and all of that. This one of the brothers wearing this blue scarf comes up to me and says, Sairam, come on, get up, Sairam, back. I often say this, we have this one universal language in the Sai fraternity, which is called Sairam. You don't need any other language. The same Sairam can convey, Sairam. Even if you want to shout, you can shout with a Sairam. Sairam, Sairam. You could have this Sairam, or you could even have a Sairam. It's a loving Sairam. And it could even be, hey, Sairam. It could be like, hey, so just this one word, Sairam, okay, multiple and all human emotions can be conveyed through Sairam. That's the beauty of this language that we have amongst the Sai fraternity. So I got one of those Turner Sairams, Sairam. And I gave him one of those sweet Sairams, Sairam. Okay. And obviously, my Sairam did not reach his heart. Okay. And so I was just asked to get up and go back. And I started arguing. Okay, the little boy that I was, because my ego was hurt. I mean, I had prayed for this. Come on, how can you stop me from having this greatest opportunity of my life? And obviously, I was telling my father, calling my father, hey, speak up for me, man. Like you're my father. You're supposed to tell them. And my father, you see, that's when I realized when we are in God's presence, everybody is unto themselves. My father is lost in his own experience of sitting in the first row. He was like, who's this guy? I don't even know him. Okay, all ties were broken then. I mean, on a lighter note. So I was just helplessly, single-handedly trying to, convince that Sevadri to allow me to sit in the first row. And because I was arguing, I was physically picked up from the first row, and I was thrown in, in those days, there used to be what are called arches. Okay, if you actually see videos from the 1980s, you will see that at the back end there would be arches. Okay, at the farthest corner of the darshan grounds, and the farthest arch was where the most mischievous children were thrown. Okay, so that enough monitoring can be done upon them. And so I was taken from the first row and I was deposited in that mischievous boy's arch. I was absolutely heartbroken. Okay, this was a devastation. How could this happen? I mean, I am supposed to be one of the most disciplined boys, or so I thought. Because, okay, there's a little backstory to this, which is in our Samiti in Bahrain, they were very, very strict. No children will allowed to sit for bhajans because, typically the child will start crying in the middle of bhajans. And so the center president was so strict. All the children were asked to sit in an inside room. Let them do whatever they want. They should not spoil the sanctity of, where the bhajans are going on, except one child who was allowed to sit in bhajans, and that was me because I loved bhajans. And so, even back then, people would come and say, "Oh, such a disciplined boy, huh? Very nice." So even then I felt that I'm a disciplined child. And so I was trying to tell that Sevadal that I'm not one of those kids who, does anything hanky panky. I'm a pretty disciplined guy, you know. And so obviously I was thrown into that, into that arch, and Swami comes out for darshan. And oh, sorry, I forgot one part, which is I was so upset that I was thrown into that arch that I started yelling loudly. Okay, I started yelling. I started saying, "This is not real Swami. This is not real Swami." I still remember very clearly, loudly. Imagine pin drop silence in Mandir, and here is a little boy yelling at the top of his voice, saying, "This is not real Swami." Because I felt if this was real Swami, how would he not know about me, right? And lo and behold, no miracle. I'll tell you what happened. Both me and my father were thrown out of the darshan grounds. Okay, because my father was asked to identify, is this your son? He says, "Oh God, yes, this is my." So take him out. He's causing disturbance. So both of us were thrown out of the darshan. So now imagine we are from the first row inside the darshan ground. Now we are standing in the first row, but outside the darshan ground. And so Swami comes, he finishes his darshan. So in those days, Swami would come out between 6:30 and 6:45 in the morning, and he would take a bunch of devotees for interview. And the interview would typically, so the darshan would typically end by 7:15, 7:15, 7:30. And from 7:30 right up to 9 o'clock, up to 8:30, 8:45, the interviews would continue, after which typically Swami would go directly for bhajans at 9 o'clock, right? So 9 to 9:30 were bhajans. So what used to happen is after Swami finishes his darshan, all the devotees would get up and they would go to the canteen to have their breakfast and attend to any other domestic chores before coming back at 9 o'clock for bhajans. So this was the standard kind of operating procedure. So that morning, Swami finished his darshan. He took a bunch of devotees inside. And my father said, he said, since anyway next day we were leaving and we did not get good darshan, right? We will forego breakfast. He said, let's not go to breakfast. Let's just sit. At least now we will get an opportunity to go inside and sit in the darshan grounds. So we went inside, and there are a handful of devotees because Swami is inside the interview room, right? And that morning, at around 8 o'clock, by 8:10 or so, the interviews get over. Okay. So Swami steps out. There is nobody in the darshan ground now. And Swami comes out of the interview room and straight looks in my direction where we are sitting. Okay. And Swami starts to walk straight from the interview room right up to where I was sitting. Just imagine now there are no first line, there is no line at all because there is hardly anybody there. Okay. No sevadals to stop because Swami is walking straight. He comes up to me and he says, in Hindi, he says, "Hey, why were you shouting in the morning?" Okay, and I am just looking because this is exactly what I wanted, right? This is far, in fact, more than what I wanted. I just wanted to touch him. I just wanted him to see me. But here he was actually talking to me, right? So he's coming up to me and Swami says, "Hey, why were you shouting?" Okay, and I'm just looking at his beautiful face. I'm just looking at his resplendent, divine face because for the first time I'm seeing him so close. Okay, and then he just hits me on my head, says, good boy, take namaskar." And so I get Pada Namaskar, and Swami walks back. It was almost as if, just to so called reprimand me or to give me that one on one, God had walked into my life. To me, this is This means a lot. Even now, I meditate upon that moment again and again. Because, dear brothers and sisters, I always feel that we as Sai devotees should cherish the first time that Swami had spoken to us, or when Swami had walked into our lives in any which way it is. Why I tell you is, you see, as a Sai devotee, our curve, that moment, that magical moment, whether it be in a bhajan, whether it be in our centers, whether it be, in Prashanti or anywhere else, it is that magical moment which makes us feel that Swami, you are mine and I am yours. So our curve is over here now. Now, eventually, what happens, once we are in the organization, the various vicissitudes of the organization ensures that this curve starts to drop down because we start taking things for granted, right? We don't cherish the first moment in our lives, right? And therefore, I always feel that every now and then, whenever you feel a little low, go back to that first moment that you had, because the energy that is there in that is absolutely second to none. So that is my first memorable experience, my very first, in fact, experience that comes to mind. Of course, Swami conducting my thread ceremony in 1990 is another extremely memorable moment of my life. And then, of course, as a primary school student and as an institute student of the Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, several other memorable instances. Sairam.
So, Brother Amey, this is really amazing. And I must say that you were very brave and bold at such a tender age to express what you did in the Darshan line.
I wouldn't dare do that now.
So please, kindly share another one of your memorable experiences with us.
Sure. So I think possibly the next most important memory in my life is Swami conducting my thread ceremony. So in 1985, during Swami's 60th birthday celebrations, there was this mass Upanayanam program. There was a mass thread ceremony that Swami had conducted, and my mother had happened to be there during that, and it was the most glorious, ceremony. Simply because, just imagine Gayatri Mother Gayatri herself giving Gayatri to everybody. Can it get better than that? Right? So a part of the thread ceremony is what is called Brahmopadesham, which is the call by Brahman himself. And that Brahmopadesham is actually a mantra, which is the Gayatri mantra. Om Bhur Bhuvasva Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodaya. This Gayatri mantra, you are initiated into the Gayatri through the process of the thread ceremony. So typically a thread is actually put across you, and anybody can actually get this done. This is the formal initiation into Gayatri, and not only Gayatri, but into all knowledge itself. And Gayatri Chandasa Mata, it is said, that is amongst all the Vedas, the mother of all the Vedas is Gayatri. So back in the yore, your entire study, secular and spiritual study, started with the Gayatri. Now imagine, typically what happens in our families is that the father actually chants the Gayatri in the ears of the boy. That's the tradition. But when this Upanayanam happens in Bhagwan's presence, Swami himself gives the Gayatri mantra to all the students. Now imagine getting Gayatri from Gayatri herself, right? So my mother saw that, and she was, in her mind, she made a prayer, a silent prayer, that Swami, if at all his thread ceremony has to happen, excuse me, it is only by you. Only if you conduct his thread ceremony, we will do his thread ceremony. Otherwise, no thread ceremony for him at all. So this was a prayer in my mother's heart, and Swami listened to us, or he heard our prayers in 1989. when on an occasion, when my grandfather, my mother, all of us were called for an interview, my mother prayed to Swami, Swami, please conduct his Upanayana. And Swami said, yes, yes, I will. How long are you all here? And he said, we all said, Swami, as long as you want us to be. And then Swami said, okay, day after tomorrow, I will conduct it. Okay, so Swami just gave us 2 days. And um, my father was not there. In fact, in Prashanti, he was in Bahrain. So my mother, after the interview got over, we had made frantic calls to all our relatives to come to Prashanti because it's a big function. The thread ceremony is a very big function. And so since Swami had directly agreed to do it graciously, so we wanted as many, family members to come. So I remember about 19 of my family members, they took the next train and they landed up in Prashanti. But my father was just not able to make it. There was no flights. All the flights were booked, and he was feeling so terrible that, he was not able to make it. Now, but he said, you know what? Let's just be absolutely happy that Swami himself is doing it. So, just go ahead with it. So with all, paraphernalia, all detailed paraphernalia, couple of days later in the morning, we were sitting. Swami comes for darshan, finishes the darshan, doesn't call us at all for interview. Okay, and most of my family members, you see, they don't know what is called the uncertainty which is associated with Swami. Swami would always say, right, love my uncertainty. Somehow my family members never accepted that uncertainty. So they all had made their bookings to go back because they just thought, yeah, Swami will conduct it and then we can take the evening train and we can return back to our hometowns. And so we kept waiting. Swami never called. So that day went. So many of my relatives left. The next day, Swami never called us. And for 3 or 4 days, Swami never called us for another interview. And so we gave up. And so all of my relatives, they told, see, it's okay. Let's do it in front of the Ganesha temple. Swami has told, see, all of us are here now. Let's perform the Upanayana in front of the Ganesha temple. The Ganesha temple, which is right at the entrance of Prashanti. My mother said, no. If Swami does not perform it directly, nobody else is going to do it. I'm not going to take just doing it in Prashanti. Okay, so as much as they tried to convince her, they were not able to. All of my relatives left. And finally, only 4 of us remained in Prashanti. My mother, my sister, myself, and my grandfather. And we had spent almost a week. And so now we had to return. And so myself and my grandfather, we had gone to Dharmavaram to actually book our railway tickets to leave back. That morning, Swami walks up to my mother in the darshan and says, see, this is the beauty of Swami. He comes up to my mother and says, where were you in Hindi? Where were you? That day I kept looking for you. You were not there at all. Okay, now we were sitting with all sorts of paraphernalia. Okay, there was no way on earth that you could miss out because there were silver trays and silver jugs. You can't miss out on something like that. But you see, Swami comes and says, where were you? I did not see you. I was looking for you. Okay, and my mother is like, Swami, we were ready. We were just waiting for you. You see, Swami never allowed us to get. We didn't take his permission to call the relatives. Okay, it was our decision. Everybody was not supposed to be called, right? Only those whom he calls can come, right? And we did not know that. I mean, obviously, nobody can ever know that. But Swami just wanted everybody else to leave, I guess. And then Swami says, okay, this evening I will perform the Upanayana. So now he doesn't give us any time at all, right? In the morning, he says, in the evening, I'm performing the Upanayana. And so that is how. Now, after the bhajans, after the darshan, how does my mother convey to us? Because we are in Dharmavaram booking the tickets. Those days, no mobile phones, no nothing. And so by the time we came back, it was 1:30 in the afternoon. And my mother is like, oh, Swami, Swami is going to perform it this afternoon. And so we frantically, whatever we could gather, the 4 of us, whatever we could gather, we gathered. No paraphernalia, no nothing, right? Just one tray, okay, with basic minimum, we sat over there. And in the evening, Swami calls us in for an interview. And just with my mother, myself, and Swami performed my thread ceremony. And what he told me at that time was so beautiful, because not only did he explain to me the meaning of Gayatri, but he also made me chant it and I repeated it after him. But he also told me the significance of the thread, right? Why there are, so in every thread, there are actually three threads. And each of the three threads, so the sacred thread is actually a combination of three threads which are interwoven. And each of those three threads have got three more threads, right? So Swami was explaining, he went into the details of that explanation of what does it mean. And so he said the first thread stands for Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara. The second thread stands for Trikala, past, present, and future. And the third thread stands for Trigunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. He said, if you contemplate on the Trimurti in the Trikala, then you will be able to transcend the Trigunas. Which is, if you are able to contemplate on the Lord at all times, you will be able to transcend, all of this, because this entire universe is made up of Trigunas. So he explained all of that. Of course, as a little boy of 10 years, I had not much idea of the depth at which he was. But I just remember one kind of a, I would say a very light moment with Swami. So I was a Balvika student, right? So Swami starts, okay, how many faces does Gayatri have? Okay. Now this is supposed to be like Balvika's 101, right? We are taught in Balvikas that she's Panchamukhi Gayatri. Gayatri has five faces. So my mother is a Balvika's teacher. So now she is, she's like, pushing me and saying, Panchamukhi, Panchamukhi. Like this is your syllabus, man. You're supposed to say it. But I'm just so, overawed. I forget everything. I'm just looking at Swami. And Swami says, five faces. Panchamukhi Gayatri. Okay. Then Swami says, do you know what are the names of the faces of Gayatri? Now here, my mother is also stumped, okay, because this is not part of any Balvika syllabus. We are not taught what are the names of the faces of Gayatri, right? So now she is also looking at Swami like, wow, this is an expansion of her syllabus. So Swami says, the five faces names are Om, Bhur Bhuvaswaha, Tat Savitur Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yona Prachodaya. Right? So every time we chant this, let us contemplate on each of the faces of Gayatri. So this was, I would say, the Brahmopadesham coming from Brahma himself, the Brahman himself, was possibly one of the most memorable moments of my life. Yeah. And of course, many, many others, I would say, um, several personal, I mean, I cannot even begin to narrate all because it would just take a very, very long time, unfortunately, if you would have noticed by now, I don't give you, I have a tendency to kind of give you all the details of a story. So I go pretty much into a lot of detail. And so to go into all of the details would be, would be a Herculean task. However, I'll just tell you one more is, as primary school students, we would come for darshans every Thursday and Sunday. So primary school children don't come every day. They come only on Thursdays and Sundays in the morning for darshan. So this was a hot morning. And so, Swami would give us prasadam, and our prasadam would be absolutely anything and everything. Okay. It would be watermelons on some days, it would be mangoes on some others, it would be obviously sweets. And there would be days when Swami will give us chocolates and Swami will even give us ice creams. So this was a day when Swami was distributing ice creams to all of us, right? And the ice cream, the manufacturer of ice cream was a devotee of Swami, Mr. Java. Okay, Mr. Java had an ice cream manufacturing plant in Bangalore, right? And so I don't know whether you know, but these were some of the oldest ice cream in Bangalore. They used to be called Joy ice creams. Okay, the name of Joy. And in those days, if you have come to Prashanti, you will get only one type of ice cream, which is called the Joy ice cream. And it will come only in vanilla flavor. If you're lucky, you will get chocolate. And then there would be these these sticks, the mango stick, the raspberry stick. For all of those old devotees, I'm sure your mouths would be salivating by now. So Swami was distributing joy ice creams. Okay. And as he distributes, okay, we are all enjoying. And Swami is saying, take one more if you want. And for some people, hey, this is your third one. I'm able to see, these beautiful interactions would be going on. And Swami says, who is God? Out of the blue, see, this is how the universal teacher teaches. While he is giving you all of these little trinkets, he will pop in, the most elevated idea. So he says, who is God? And now all of us are wondering, what kind of a question is this? We are all like, eating our ice cream, and Swami is saying, who is God? And Swami says, so we said, Swami, you are God. And then Swami says, God is like ice cream. Okay. Wow. Okay. How is God like ice cream? Swami goes on to explain. Swami says, God is cool like ice cream. Okay. Just like an ice cream is cool, God is also very cool. God is sweet like ice cream. Okay. So God is sweetness personified. Then Swami says, and God is white, pure like ice cream. And that is why he is called joy ice cream. Okay. So, the ultimate, what would I say? The ultimate definition of God was what I got that day. And so today, there may be 1,000 other definitions of God, but I think the most ultimate definition is God is ice cream, because he's cool like an ice cream, he's sweet like ice cream, he's pure like ice cream, and he is joy ice cream, right? So this is one of the other experiences. Saira.
Thank you very much, Brother Amir. And yes, I remember that joy ice cream right after darshan, especially evening darshan when the sun is very hot. I used to journey there together with so many other devotees, with the what we call the liquor stick and the different flavors.
Yes,
And it was truly, truly refreshing. So, and that is so wonderful how Swami related God to the ice cream in terms of the qualities of the ice cream. Very, very beautiful indeed. But just going back to your thread ceremony, you spoke about Swami asking you to repeat the Gayatri mantra. And I know that we have heard so much about this Gayatri mantra, the power, the potency, the effect. But can you spend a few minutes about how important it is to the spiritual aspirant, the benefits that can accrue when you chant this mantra, one in the proper way? And Baba, we are so lucky that the Gayatri, the source of it himself, has given us how to chant it. What are some of the benefits that can accrue to the spiritual aspirant when he chants it correctly with the proper intonation, and most importantly, with that bhav and feeling? And then I remember Swami saying, you could forget any other mantra, never forget the Gayatri, because it is the essence of the Vedas.
absolutely. So Gayatri, of course, this can be an entirely a satsang of its own. It can be an entire talk of its own. Very simply, Gayatri simply means Gayantam Trayate iti Gayatri, which means the one who chants it is protected by it. Trayate means to protect. So the one who chants is being protected by it. So what is really happening is it is creating an armor of sorts. It's actually creating an armor. The more and more you chant any mantra, a mantra is what creates an armor around us. So that's the first thing. Coming to the Gayatri per se, we have to kind of split this into its most important terms. If you look at the term Gayatri, right? So what happens in any mantra starts with Om. Om is the primeval sound. Then what are the next three words? Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. So these are the three levels of our existence, which is the gross, the subtle, and the causal. So this is actually telling us a direction in which I have to move, right? It is, I go from gross to subtle, and from subtle to causal, and even to supra-causal, which is beyond it. How do I do that? By meditating upon the light. You see, why Gayatri is a universal mantra is because it does not talk about, it does not give you any particular denomination of God. It does not tell you Shiva or Krishna or Rama or, Jesus or nothing. It doesn't tell you any denomination of God. It simply says the light. Tat Savituhu, that light, right? Varenyam, which is worshipped by everyone. Now, what am I asking of that light? That comes in the last term, which is Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Dhi refers to our buddhi, which is our intellect. Our intellect is what actually tells us what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is real, what is unreal, what is permanent, what is impermanent, right? And so, unless we are able to use the most important faculty for a spiritual sadhaka, is her or his intellect. In fact, all of the sadhana we do only to sharpen our intellect, to sharpen this buddhi, because it is only this faculty of the mind which will tell us this, the qualifications for a spiritual sadhaka. Have you heard of that? Swami often talks about Viveka, Vairagya, Shansappanti, and Mumukshatvam. These are the four qualifications for any spiritual sadhaka. What are they? Discernment, Viveka, Vairagya, detachment, Shatsampati, the sixfold treasures, and Mumukshatvam, an intense desire for liberation. These are the four criteria. The very first one is Viveka. Viveka means to separate, which means to discern between what is real and what is unreal. You see, even in the universal prayer that all of us chant, take us from untruth to truth, take us from darkness to light, take us from mortality to immortality. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. We must be able to know what is untruth and what is truth, isn't it? That faculty which helps us to discern between untruth and truth is our buddhi. And through the Gayatri mantra, we are actually asking for that buddhi to be sharpened, right? That is why I feel that the Gayatri is an absolute must for any spiritual sadhaka. Of course, there are so many other benefits of the Gayatri chanting, even material benefits it has. But I'm sure, asking for material benefits from Gayatri is like what Swami would often say, from a wish fulfilling tree, you ask for coffee powder. Right? You don't ask for coffee powder from a wish fulfilling tree, right? You ask from a wish fulfilling tree for the ultimate. So similarly, while Gayatri can help you even in your material pursuits, the purpose of Gayatri is, in fact, to strengthen or sharpen our intellect. So I will just end it over there by just saying these words. Saira.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those very powerful reminders of the benefits of chanting the Gayatri mantra. So, Brother Amir, what does Sai Baba mean to you today?
Well, I would only say that Sai Baba is my guru, he's my guide, and he's my God. So I would say it is in that particular order. As I said, I don't know what is God. I am nobody to certify somebody as my God, right? But I have always looked up to Swami as my guru because he is truly my personal guru and guide. So I look at him for any and every solution to any and every problem in my life. That is what Sai Baba means to me.
Thank you very much. Short, sweet, and to the point.
Because, because each of these, that's the beauty of the spiritual lexicon, if I can say. For those of you who have truly understood the meaning of guru, you will know what I am saying. right? Each of these words, guru, God, these are all like, in computer parlance, if I can use that, you have something called zipped files, right? When you want to transfer big files from one place to the other, what do? We zip them, okay? And then we transfer them. And then we now need to unzip them. If I need to actually access the documents, right, what do? We unzip them. Each of these terms, they are like zip files. Okay, we need to unzip them. Each of the word that Swami speaks to us is like a zip file. There is so much packed into it. What we need to do, and this is what sadhana is all about. This is what spiritual practice is all about, which is to unpack, which is to unzip each of these terms. So that's why I will not go more into the details of why is he my guru, or so on and so forth. I'll just keep it short.
Dr. Amey Deshpande, the Sri Satya Sai Global Council of Trinidad and Tobago, extends appreciation and gratitude to Mother Sai for allowing you to share your personal journey and transformation at His divine lotus feet. We are truly and extremely blessed, fortunate, and honored to have you as our guest. May Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba continue to bless and guide you, and may you continue to be the loving instrument that you are as His mission unfolds. Jai Sai Ram.